The British and Irish Lions are dominating in Australia. The Under-20 World Cup has reached its final. And qualifying for Rugby World Cup 2027 is heating up all over the globe. Hello and welcome to the Rugby Roundup, here with Big Mike Sports. It is the 16th of July 2025. I'm Big Mike. Now let's talk some rugby. On this week's episode, we also discuss the finals in the Rugby Africa Championship, which will determine who qualifies for the World Cup as Africa 1. We've got the Sudamerica starting, which will determine a few teams qualifying from South America. And the Test series between the Lions and Australia is kicking off this weekend. I do send out my sincerest apologies that there wasn't a Rugby Roundup last week. Between family visiting and going to Canberra to watch the Brumbies taking on the Lions, it sort of slipped under the radar and was unfortunately forgotten. But enough of all that. Let's get to the roundup. First, I'm going to start with international men's action. We have 2 weeks to catch up on. So we will start with a brief rundown of everything that happened 2 weekends ago. In the first match of their 3-test match series, New Zealand defeated France narrowly 31-27. South Africa got a good victory over Italy 42-24. Argentina, after their victory against the British and Irish Lions, hosted England and lost 35-12. A last-minute try to Australia got them a 21-18 victory over the Flying Fijians in Newcastle. A second-half destruction job got Japan over the line against Wales to give them yet another loss. The New Zealand Māori were hosting Scotland, and Scotland got their first ever victory over such a great squad. It was 29-26 in Whangarei. Georgia hosted Ireland and went down 34-5. Chile beat Romania, a team that has already qualified for the World Cup, 40-16. The USA beat Belgium 36-17. And Brazil went down to an Argentina 15 squad, 45-17. Lots of big results to digest for the top nations, but also these were warm-up games. Yes, they are test matches, but they are warm-up games for a lot of squads who will be going into World Cup qualifiers very soon. Now to the weekend we have just had. In the second test match, New Zealand defeated France 43-17 in an absolutely astonishing stat. Beauden Barrett, New Zealand's first 5, had more test caps than the entire French starting squad combined. New Zealand had scored 29 points in that first half. The game was over and they went into a bit of cruise control. And the French have lost the series that they were expected to lose. Now, in the second test match in South Africa, Italy went down 45-0. This one featured some tactics by the South Africans that were quite fun to watch. But the Italian coach was not happy, as it was already a blowout. We saw things such as, purposely kicking the ball short in a kickoff to go into a scrum, and throwing to a line-out lift in the middle of the field. 45-0 to South Africa. Now in Japan, Wales have finally done it. 31-22 victory over the Brave Blossoms. The Welsh have ended that losing streak. They only lost 18 test matches in a row. In Suva, it was a close first half, and then Fiji ran away in the second half to beat Scotland 29-14. After that tight, close loss to Australia and then this victory over Scotland, Fiji are looking great going into the Pacific Nations Cup, which starts in a few weeks. Now, Ireland, who are missing an entire first-team squad, went to Portugal, who have already qualified for the World Cup, and won 106-7. The Portuguese side was not ready. They were not that same squad from the World Cup. They weren't even the same squad from the Rugby Europe Championship earlier in the year, coming off holidays, coming off weddings, and going down to a weakened Ireland squad by 99 points. Ireland's most points ever in a test match. Uruguay, who are going into the Sudamerica Championship, defeated Romania 70-8. That means Romania have gone down to both Chile and Uruguay. And they have the Argentina 15 this weekend. Romania are sitting in 21st. Argentina nearly got the victory over England, but England won this test series 2-0, 22-17 over Argentina. A great victory over the Lions, and then two very disappointing losses to England. Then Belgium, who did have that loss to the USA Eagles the week before, got up over Canada 25-18, one of the biggest victories for Belgium ever. Reminder, this Belgium squad finished 5th in the Rugby Europe Championship. They will be in that final qualifying tournament, potentially playing Canada at the end of the year. Speaking of the USA, they went down 20-31 to Spain. Great victory for Spain here. They came second in the Rugby Europe Championship. They have already qualified for the World Cup. They have jumped the USA into 15th spot in the world rankings. And in our final game on the weekend in internationals, we have Georgia, who are touring Africa. They went down 24-20 to the Free State Cheetahs. And speaking of the Cheetahs, they are out of all of those European competitions except for the continental ones. And their director, he's talking about Super Rugby. Could we potentially see the return of a South African team into Super Rugby in the future? Now, a couple of weekends ago, we had the final round of the Asia Rugby Championship. In the first game of that week, the UAE beat Sri Lanka 29-21. This was a week after they beat South Korea. And speaking of South Korea, if they won their final game, they would have qualified for the World Cup, but they went down to Hong Kong, China. This one finished 70-22. Now, that means of the four teams, Hong Kong came first and have qualified for the Rugby World Cup 2027. Congratulations, Hong Kong. The UAE came second, and they will be in a playoff against Africa 2, which will be determined this weekend. The winner of that go into that final qualifying tournament, which currently has Belgium. South Korea came third, and Sri Lanka have been relegated. They came fourth. No victories for them. Goodbye. So long, Sri Lanka. Now let's go to Africa. We have had the quarterfinals and the semi-finals of the Rugby Africa Cup. Now this one is important. The winner of this is Africa 1 and qualifies for the Rugby World Cup in 2027. The second place team in this competition will have that playoff against the UAE. Now, in the quarterfinals, there were no upsets. We had Zimbabwe beating Morocco 43-8. Kenya defeated Uganda 32-24. Namibia got a big victory over Senegal 55-17. And Algeria beat the Ivory Coast 41-6. The semi-finalists were the same four teams as last year. And in these semi-finals, Zimbabwe played phenomenally in the second half and got a 29-23 victory over Kenya. Meanwhile, Algeria, despite playing hard, went down 21-7 to Namibia. The final this weekend, Namibia taking on Zimbabwe. This competition is taking part in Uganda. Now let's talk about the Lions tour. Their first test match is this weekend. Since the last time we caught up, the Lions have had 4 games, and they are doing very, very well. Now, they started off this tour with a big victory over the Western Force. Since then, they have beaten the Queensland Reds 52-12, the New South Wales Waratahs 21-10, the ACT Brumbies 36-24, and an Australia-New Zealand invitational squad featuring former Wallabies and former All Blacks. The Lions won this game 48-0. It was very clear that this invitational squad had only been together for a few days. From a personal note, the Lions-Brumbies game was a whole lot of fun. Lions scored a last-second try in that first half to go out 19-10, and since then they stayed ahead. They stayed ahead of the Brumbies, and the Brumbies couldn't catch up. The Brumbies gave it their all, but they were clearly missing their 8 Wallabies who were not available for the game. There were 23,000 people in GAO Stadium in Canberra. I've been to a couple of Brumbies games, and that beat all of the rest of them by about 23,000 people. Now, lastly, for the men's game, we have the Under-20s World Cup taking part in Italy. We had our semi-finals on the weekend. New Zealand defeated France 34-26. This is the first time since before 2018 that France has not been in the final. And in our other semi-final, South Africa beat Argentina 48-24. New Zealand versus South Africa in the final. The first Southern Hemisphere final since 2012 where South Africa beat New Zealand. To the women's game, there has been a test series in South Africa with the third-placed Canada squad going into South Africa and winning both test matches. The first one 50-20, secondly 33-5. Great games by the Canadian women. Also in the Laurie O'Reilly Cup, the women's version of the Bledisloe on the weekend, New Zealand defeated Australia 37-12 in that match before the All Blacks game. No club rugby results over the last 2 weeks, and no sevens results as well. So let's talk about me. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Big Mike. I am here at Big Mike Sports. Best way to find me, Big Mike Sports NZ, Instagram, YouTube, X. If you want me to talk about any teams, any games, any competitions, the best place to do it is let me know on one of those or to comment on the Spotify link. They're the only places I read. Yep, I don't feel like reading a book right now, but I feel like talking about more rugby. We had some great feedback about talking about the counties, Manukau Secondary Schools Comp. Obviously, there's been no games because we've been in the school holidays. So you know what we're going to do? We are going to talk about this upcoming weekend in rugby, starting with international men's action. In the third and final game of the Test Series, New Zealand will be hosting France. This one's in Hamilton. The French are not staying in Hamilton, they're staying in Auckland. I wonder why. These two teams are still ranked 2nd and 4th, and no matter what happens in this game, they will still be ranked 2nd and 4th after the July international window. Now, who's first? That, of course, our good friends, the Springboks. They will be hosting Georgia. Now, Georgia have had a disappointing July window so far, going down to Free State on the weekend and having that loss to Ireland at home. Expect a good victory for the Springboks here, finalising their squads and their combinations before heading into their defence of the Rugby Championship. Speaking of the Rugby Championship, we have the Pumas, who have slid down to 7th spot in the world. They will be hosting Uruguay in their annual fixture. Can Uruguay get the upset? They will be having a lot of momentum after beating Romania 70-8 last weekend. But Argentina will be hurting and will be wanting the victory. England, who beat Argentina, are away to the USA. This is a great fixture. England are going to destroy them. But the USA will hope to stand firm, build up their combinations heading into their World Cup qualifying in the Pacific Nations Cup, where they will be competing against Samoa, who are 13th in the world and will be playing their first test match of the year against Scotland. Scotland have done all right so far on this tour. They did go down big to Fiji. They won't want to lose both games in the Pacific Islands, despite being such a great team and actually touring them. Also in the Pacific Nations Cup is Canada, who are 24th in the world and lost to Belgium on the weekend. They will be taking on a 15th ranked Spanish squad looking to complete the North American double. And finally, Romania, 21st in the world, taking on an Argentina 15 squad to finish off their Southern American. That's not how you say it. Their South American tour. Then we are talking the big qualifier from Africa. It is Namibia versus Zimbabwe for Africa 1. This is the 25th ranked team in the world versus the 26th. Now, Namibia has been the African qualifier for the World Cup for every World Cup since 1999. Zimbabwe have not been at a Rugby World Cup since 1991. In last year's final of the Rugby Africa Cup, Zimbabwe beat Namibia. No, they didn't. Zimbabwe won the competition, but they beat Namibia in the semi-final last year, 32-10. Big upset. Can Zimbabwe defend their championship and qualify for the Rugby World Cup? This is going to be a really cool, fun game. Now let's talk about the Sudamerica Rugby Championship. This one's big. This one has lots of World Cup tension. Okay, so there are 4 teams in this competition. There is Uruguay, who are ranked 17th, Chile, who are 20th, Brazil, who are 28th, and Paraguay, who are 39th in the world. The first place squad will qualify automatically into the Rugby World Cup. Second place will play Pacific 4 in a playoff. Now that team is likely to be Canada, as in the Pacific Nations Cup, Fiji and Japan have already qualified so the last 4 teams in that tournament will go Pacific 1 through 4. The winner of that playoff will qualify. The loser will go into the last chance qualifier. I know it's getting complicated. That's okay. The third place team from the Sudamerica Rugby Championship will also go into that qualifying tournament with Belgium. So this will be semi-finals and finals, all with 2 legs each. Paraguay versus Uruguay will start next weekend as Uruguay have their big match against Argentina. But this weekend we have the first game between Brazil and Chile. This is 28th in the world hosting 20th in 2024. Chile won this 36-10. Brazil will be hoping to have a bit of a fight this week, not necessarily to win, but to have a good fight so they still have a chance for their second leg next weekend. Now to the Lions tour. It doesn't stop. It keeps going. It is the first test against the 6th ranked Wallabies. This one is at Suncorp Stadium. It is the Australian fortress when it comes to rugby. So many questions will be answered in this game. I cannot wait. What will be the makeup of the teams? James O'Connor has found his way back into the Australian squad. Will he be the fairy tale darling that gives them victory? Or will the Irish, Scottish, English Lions, potentially a little bit of Welsh Lions, just absolutely destroy Australia? Currently on my sports betting app, Australia are paying $3.80 for the victory. Also next Tuesday, the Lions will be playing a First Nations and Pacifica squad made up of Australian-based First Nations and Pacifica players and a few Fijians. How wonderful is that? The jersey is absolutely atrocious compared to what it could be. Now, to that Under-20s World Cup, we are only talking about the final. It is New Zealand versus South Africa. The last South African title in Under-20s World Cup was in 2012. That squad had players like Steven Kitsoff, Peter Steph du Toit and Andre Pollard. The last New Zealand title was in 2017. That squad had players like Will Jordan, Dalton Papali'i, Caleb Clark, Asafa Armour, Luke Jacobson, and Stephen Perofeta. Who will be the future Springboks and All Blacks playing in this game this weekend? Who will win it? The first time a Southern Hemisphere team is going to take home the crown since 2017. In women's international action this weekend, we've got some World Cup building squads. Only a month out from that World Cup starting in England. It is Japan versus Spain, 11th versus 13th in the world, and the USA is playing Fiji. This is 9th versus 15th. Fiji were the winners of the Oceania Championship. The USA came last in the Pacific Four. One club rugby game this weekend that I care about, and that is a Ranfurly Shield game. Taranaki defending against Thames Valley of the Heartland Championship. The NPC starts in a couple of weekends' time. What else is coming up next week sees the start of the Currie Cup in South Africa. And of course, in August, we have the Women's World Cup. So what are our big three games of the weekend? If you've only got time to watch one, follow one, see one, whatever. Hey, maybe make sure it's one of these guys. We could talk about New Zealand versus France. We could talk about South Africa playing. We could talk about Argentina, England. Nah. We are going to talk about the Lions taking on Australia. We are going to talk about the Under-20 Rugby World Cup final between New Zealand and South Africa, and our final big three game this weekend that I want you all to keep an eye on if you can. It is Namibia versus Zimbabwe. The winner of this qualifies for the Rugby World Cup. It is that simple. Can Zimbabwe do it for the first time since 1991? Or will Namibia reclaim their dominance of Africa? Let's see this weekend. Okay. Once again, big apologies for missing last week's episode. It wasn't my choice. It was just how the week panned out. But thankfully, international window. It's nice to talk about all these games in one big go. Club rugby is back and better than ever next week. We've got the Lions kicking off in Australia in that beautiful test series. We've got World Cup qualifiers. So much beautiful things going on in the world of rugby. And I hope you have a beautiful week and watch some beautiful rugby.